One of my happiest memories, I have to tell you about when Grandpa went to, he was going to go on his mission. And so I actually went to his farewell to tell him I was not going to wait for him. And I had decided that, yeah, I wasn't. I didn't love him, and it wasn't going to work. And I didn't want to lead him on. So we drove from Napa to Concord. It was my dad and I, because my mom was she was in Salt Lake at Young Women's General Conference. And so I went there, and I walked into his church, and he had a lot of relatives there that I'd never met before, and but I wanted to keep my distance. And so I sat there, and as the meeting started, it was like a light went on. It was really, seriously, like a light bulb moment, and a light went on. And during his farewell, his uncle talked about what a great guy he was, and he talked, and I knew that I would wait for him. And so when it was over, I was ready to leave, and I told him I loved him and I would wait for him, and it was seriously a total turnaround. And he left about a week later. We went to San Francisco and had dinner the night before he left, and with my parents, and he brought me home, and it was really a sweet and tender time. We knelt and had prayer together, and we both cried, and he left the next morning. And then so we wrote for 2 years. So that was actually June 21st when his farewell was on Father's Day. He came, and so we wrote for 2 years. And I waited, but I still dated, but I knew that that was it. And he came home on the plane. My dad took me to Concord to be with Grandma and Grandpa Wilhite and to ride with them, and we all went to the airport, just his family. And he came off the plane, and I reached out my hand, and he reached out his to shake it, and he shook my hand, and then he grabbed me and kissed me, and that was a great moment. And then that was June 21st, 1967. Then July 16th, we got engaged. So a week ago, and 50 years ago. And then we got married September 8th. So he got home in June, we got engaged in July, and married in September. So that was the happiest time. But I have to tell you though, when we got engaged, so I was surprised. In fact, I always thought I'll say no the first time and make him work for it. And so, but I had no idea. He just said he wanted to take me to the city. It was called the City back then, and we went to San Francisco and did some stuff, and then went over to Oakland and went to the Oakland Temple, and everything went wrong that day. Everything. I mean, he had his black Chevy, and he bought donuts, and he had them in the car, on the floor. And anyway, we got to Oakland, and we walked over to the fountain in front of the Oakland Temple. And we were just sitting there, and then he kind of leaned forward, and then got down on his knee and asked me to marry him. And I was so shocked. I said, yes. And then there were so many people walking around that it wasn't very private at all. So then we went up on top of the temple to a little garden area, and we were sitting there talking, and I was still so shocked that he'd asked me, and we were trying to decide what to do, and he was saying something about, well, I think we should get married right away. And he talked about having children, and I said, I think we should wait. And we didn't know what we each were talking about. So it was all a mixture of misunderstanding. But then he wanted to have a prayer, so we said a little prayer together up there, and then headed back to the car. And we got to the car. Ants had gotten into his car, somehow, into his car, and we're all over the donuts. They were on the floor. I don't know how they did it, so we had to throw the donuts away. And so then we drove on. So driving home, we decided to stop it and watch a drive-in movie. It was a crummy show. Sandra Dee was in it. But as he pulled into the parking, there's a little stand there where the speakers are. His pride and joy was his Chevy, his black Chevy. And he pulled in and he scraped the side of his car with the speaker. And we put the speaker in, and it didn't work. So then he had to scrape his car to get out to get to another speaker. And then neither one of us could think much about the movie, which was good. It wasn't a very good movie, but then we got home really late, and I told him he had to ask my permission from my dad first. So we didn't say anything to anybody till the next morning, and that was actually the 16th when it was official, July 16th. And so he asked permission, and my folks were for him all along, right from the very beginning. So that was my happiest.